don't know what to say.
Alright, so back. Went ahead and jumped ahead a bit. So I cleaned out the fork tube so there's no debris or anything in there. Pulled the seal. This is it right here. That's the old one that was leaking. And our new one is right here. It came in a 2-pack, so I already put one in. But, no, just like any other regular seal. That's all it looks like. Now, obviously, the side that's facing the camera right now goes down and in first. And when you put it in, there's a washer in here that goes down into the fork like that. And then you'll take your seal and you'll set it down and in here. Now you can realistically do this with anything that is the same diameter as the seal. But on most of them, you would be putting the seal on with it still on the inner tube. And this tool here is what you would set in to drive the seal on like that around the fork. And just for informational purposes only, I will show you how that's done. So, you obviously want to keep everything as clean as possible. So, I'm going to wipe this off. And then the seal here, you'll usually want to put a little bit of grease on the inside so it doesn't catch anything. Slide it down, and then you'll shove this back in. With different forks, there's different types of ways to do it. And Jonathan, you want to hold that? You need to hold it upwards. This little piece here, it just slips around and goes on like that.
Sorry.
And then this ring, it splits into 2 pieces. It's got the plastic grooves in here to protect the inner tube from getting scarred up. And you'll take it and you'll slip it around just like that. Quit moving. Oh, you keep pulling up and down. And all you do is, it's just like a slide hammer, and you go like that. And then there's little lips on the plastic here. You really can't see them. That is a universal stopping point for all motorcycle stills or seals. So after you tap it in a few times, really doesn't take that much force. You just pull this back off. Set that there. Pull this back off. Now it's back in. You can pull this tube back out. Just for now, you can take your snap ring at this point in time, and it should just pop right in if your seal is in far enough. And just like mine, popped right in. There's a groove in here for it, and you'll put a little bit of grease on the inside of the seal here, so that way it slides on the shaft and you don't tear the new seal. And once again, very adamant, keep everything clean. Now you got a rod on the inside of the fork here that I was pointing out to you earlier. This rod needs to stay up as high as as you can keep it after you get everything reassembled, because you need to keep it up so you can reassemble it. Hold that. I'm gonna squeeze past you real quick. Now, you can use any real grease you can, or any good grease. I'm using Lucas Ultra Tacky Red Grease. Realistically, any bearing grease will work for this. You don't need much, just a small little dab like that. And come to the inside of the seal here and cover the whole inner lips of the seal, so that way when you reassemble it, your fork tube won't damage it. And then your dust seal, you'll want to put this back on to the inner tube before putting anything else back together, or else you're going to go without a dust seal. And then you take it, slip it back in. You'll feel a little stopping point, just kind of twist a bit, and it'll go right back in. And now you gotta fish that tube out. I just realized I don't have enough oil in that. Jonathan, give me that syringe. Now, since this is my second seal, I've got a little oil from the previous one that I'm gonna put back in here. This syringe is just to measure your oil levels after you get it all put back together. And all I'm doing is I'm just taking the excess from the last one and pumping it back into this one. Okay. You're going to be using that again. And then I'm using Silcoline RSF 7.5 weight fork and suspension oil. They have a few different sized oils. This one has kind of a cool color. It's purple. Don't know how well you could see that, but this one's purple. I'm not sure what the other colors would be, but now it's going to drain in there, and you've got air in there that's built up. So you're going to want to let it kind of work its way down. And this doesn't have enough oil in this one for me to do the whole thing. So I'm probably going to have to get a little bit more oil from my second quart. But yeah, there's not enough in there. But that's okay. We can top it off as soon as we're done. Now, if I can Judah. It's kind of hard to get this to come back out, but you want to work it so you can get those air pockets out of the bottom of the dampener. And as you do this, you'll see air bubbles. Jonathan, there's a bag over there with another bottle of this stuff. Go grab it. And you'll just want to work it out a bit. That way there's no air in there. It'll work just right. And each fork is different. They take a different amount. Mine takes, for the 03R1, it takes 543 milliliters. And you just want to work it up and down a bit. Get all those air bubbles out. Kind of multitasking a bit. Now, I know on other forks they usually make more of a gurgle when you do this. So I don't know if my dampener is starting to go bad or what it could be, but that'll be a different story for a different time. Once I have more specialty tools and I can do that. But right now, it is what it is. I mean, I can hear it bubble. I don't know if you can hear it in the video when I first put the oil in there. But it bubbles a bit. which is the oil seeping down past your dampener. And so I'm going to be adding a bit more oil into here, just so I can make sure I get everything out. And I don't know how well you can see it, but there's little bubbles in there. They may just show up as spots in the video, but those little spots in the oil is actually bubbles from me going up and down with it and working that air out. Okay. And whatever you can do, make sure you don't let that rod fall back in there. As soon as you do, it's a challenge getting it back out. So, now we're getting ready to put the spring back in. And all you want to do, wipe all that old oil off to the best of your ability. So that way, your oil's a little bit more accurate. Because they say you're only supposed to go plus or minus to what your bike calls for. And if you do less, your forks will bounce more. And if you do more than what it's recommended, it actually makes your forks stiffer. And depending on the way you ride, you'll probably do more. If you want a softer ride, you'll probably do less. But, I mean, a bike has pretty good adjustments on it all the way across the board anyways. So, realistically, as long as you stay with what you're supposed to be doing for levels, it shouldn't matter. And then, this is where it gets kind of fun, because you have to drop this spring down over that rod before the rod drops down far enough. So, I kind of get the spring set. And then I drop it down and grab the rod again so it doesn't sink all the way down. And then there's one other piece that I mentioned earlier in the video. It's that little plate that has to go over the spring so your cap doesn't just go straight through the spring, because then you wouldn't have any support or spring support or anything like that. So make sure that's nice and wiped down and clean too. And then same thing, you just kind of set it over. That's small enough, you can just pop it right over. And then as soon as I find where everything went, where's my impact at?
Behind you.
You're fine, you can move around a bit.
There you go.
Thank you. And at. Okay. So, and then once again, here's this sleeve. Kind of wipe that down a bit. I'll show you it again here in a second. So, there's that sleeve again. Same thing. This is kind of a tricky part. You'll want your cap here, which this one got a little bit more dirtier than the last time, the first one. So I just need to give it a real quick wipe down, make sure there's nothing on there that could damage the seal or damage anything on the inside. And basically what you need to do now, which, yeah, hold that. So I just learned something a little new on here. Having your adjuster cap on here to the loosest setting actually makes it easier to pull apart and put together. Or at least to put back together. I probably shouldn't be hitting it that hard, but it'll be okay. Most likely you should use hand tools for that. Okay, and then you're gonna hand me that.
Oh, you got it?
Yep. And then what you do here is need to make sure everything's gonna work to the best of my ability on this.
Is it on the right?
So, gets challenging again. Yeah, this is where it's gonna get hard. Gonna try and use this to shove it up a bit. Okay. Come back here. Alright, so this one's going to be a little bit more challenging than the first one. Missed it. So, this is definitely a challenge here, guys. Because this has to stay all together like this. Oh, wait, I got it the first time. There we go. So, the easiest way to put it is this little lip clip right here. If you set it cockeyed, your sleeve will slide right over it, which gives the thread on the inside here a little bit easier, more length to grab onto your dampening rod. And actually, I'm forgetting to put something back in. Make sure you don't lose this rod here. If you do, your fork will not work properly. That goes in the center hole here. It just drops straight down like that into it. And then now I can actually twist this back onto the rod with my fingers because that sleeve dropped. And see, now I can grab everything and it's not gonna fall apart. And you actually need this to lift up so you can get that little piece back in, because if you try to do it with that piece out, you'll catch it and you won't be able to compress this piece back down. So now that that's in, we can go back after compressing it so we can get it put together. Let me, just move that bucket out of the way.
Move a few things out of the way here.
And then we're going back to our tool so we can compress that rod back down to torque our cap back onto the dampening rod. Once again, you slide it over. and you compress it just enough to where you can get the first nut on. Like I said, this is easier to do with 2.5 inch than 2-inch PVC. That's what happens when you don't listen to people who give you advice. You end up running into problems like this. So, if you're doing this yourself, please make sure, if you have anybody that's giving you advice on it, please make sure you listen to them on what they do or what they tell you to get to make your life a little easier. And as soon as I get this nut on, like that, you'll line those bolts and back up with your holes so you can compress it back down. Now at this point in time, you need to be a little bit more careful because now you have fresh, brand new oil inside your fork, and you don't really want to dump any of that out because it's not cheap. So you want to make sure to keep this thing upright until you are putting your cap back on. A little bit of a struggle, but in the end, it's worth it. I just made my life a little bit more challenging because I didn't buy the right size. And get it nice and locked down, and now you are ready to compress it. So make sure you got your tools all easily accessible here. So you want to hold that. And for your information, this top cap bolt here is a 1 3/16. For that, it's most likely a metric. Your top golden cap here is a 14 millimeter, and your nut on the dampening rod is a 14 millimeter as well. And so now what you do, same thing, just like tearing it apart. You compress it down. Start screwing it in. A little bit more. There you go. Come on. Start locking. Okay. Now it's a battle. But oh,
Son of your.
there you go. Push down again.
Here, I'm gonna try to straighten it out so it doesn't slip again.
Here.
Alright. Oh. pushing, but it's not going very far down.
Come on.
Shit.
And it's locked down. Okay, now come back up.
It's up there. Oh, it's not.
Push down. Come on. Okay, come back up. There you go. And now part of it is done. Now you just need to take your tool back off. Well, I didn't grab it anymore because I need an actual 13. Okay.
Where'd it go?
I don't know. I haven't seen it. Very long process to do this, but there we go. That's the one side. And then loosen everything back up so you can get it off and out.
Okay.
And tools off. And then do one more quick wipe down. Sorry. And I'm not sure how well this is going to work with everything put back in, but you want to suck some of the fluid back out. This is a fork oil level tool, so you stay about the right level. Go in with a little bit. Okay. And then after you do that, kind of don't want that to spill anywhere. That's expensive oil. Can always use it again. Just want to make sure everything's nice and clean. And then you just pull the seal back up, or the outer tube, and then you twist it back shut. And after you get a couple of turns on it, now you won't be able to lock it down like this, but you can at least get it close enough to being sealed that all you need to do, now, and I like to do this before testing it, just to make sure there's absolutely no oil that comes out. Just take a little bit of brake clean and wipe your tube off again, so you can see that everything's nice and oil free. And then you're going to get a little bit of grease residue from the grease you put on that seal. But now, if you push it up and down a few times, you can see no oil. This seal is now, this fork is now done, and it can go back together. It's a long process if you don't have the right tools, but when it's all said and done, it's worth it. It saves you a bit of money if you plan on doing this quite a bit in the future. Now, if anything you guys do to your bike or it leaks after, or there's anything I am not liable for, this is for informational purposes only. Thanks for watching, and good luck to you.